It's no surprise that there are constant conversations about coding and computer sciences because it is well established now with the world of technology and AI that these are the futures of work, especially for those who are at school going age right now. And in a recent article in South African online news publication, the Daily Maverick, Associate Professor in Computing Sciences at the Nelson Mandela University and founder of Tangible Africa argues that equipping learners with coding and robotics instruction isn't just about diversion, but it's rather a powerful amplifier for foundational skills like numeracy and literacy. And we know that in South Africa in particular, there's been a lot of talk about a huge decline in numeracy and literacy amongst our learners. And if they say these could increase our skills, perhaps it's something to listen closer to. And rather than pushing core academics aside, the piece highlights how hands-on tech-driven learning can also reinforce mathematical reasoning, language comprehension, and critical thinking. We're finding out how in this hour of the show, chatting about how coding and robotics could actually enhance literacy and numeracy for our school-going learners. We have on the line with us the Tangible Africa Global Engagement Manager, Jackson Tshabalala. Jackson, thank you so much for your time. Good morning.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here and it's great to share digital education on Channel Africa.
It's great that we have this conversation because these are the conversations that matter the most right now. We speak every day about tech. A week doesn't go by without speaking about AI. And not only is the current reality, but the future is even more complicated and more sort of integrated with these particular dynamics. So let's speak a little bit about that, this power and where we are right now, especially for our young learners who are going to be in this future we speak of.
Yeah, so when we think about it, Tangible was developed to reach learners who are unreached. So we are an access project when it comes to coding and robotics, because majority of schools in South Africa don't have access to computers, to internet infrastructure. So even when we look at it technically, we are seeing that maybe out of 25,000 schools in South Africa, 16,000 of them don't have access to computer labs. So we an easy accessible way in order to teach coding and robotics by using basic puzzle pieces, low-cost mobile device, and you wouldn't have to worry about internet once you have our app on your phone, and then you can charge them at home or wherever you are. So because the world is becoming digital and there's a digital economy, we need to equip the learners in schools today to be ready for that future, actually the present.
You know, we speak about that, and yes, they need to be ready for the present and the future, as you highlight. And just last week, I heard a very worrying news story that 87% of Gauteng, this is the Gauteng province here in South Africa, of Gauteng public schools are not connected to the internet. And only 260 public schools out of 2,059 have internet connection. And this leaves millions of learners isolated from the internet and creating a new lost generation. This is, of course, after around 2021 already, all schools were supposed to have Wi-Fi, but now still 87% don't. It seems like, we're speaking about this coding and robotics, but without even Wi-Fi, we're way behind in these discussions.
That's such a powerful point. My background is in industrial psychology, and I recently got into coding, especially when I joined Tangible Africa. And we look at industrial revolutions, right? Like from the first industrial revolution about the steam engine, and then we look at the second one around electricity, and the third one around internet and Internet of Things, etc. And we're still struggling with the second industrial revolution, and we are moving into the fifth. So conversations about what resources learners have is really supposed to be in the forefront of policy makers. And what we offer is unplugged coding. So if 87% of those schools don't have internet access, we have a solution for that. And that's what we are really talking about. The curriculum, the CAPS curriculum for coding and robotics that was gazetted last year, it's focusing on unplugged for foundation phase. And we have lessons that can reach teachers, whether they're in a city, whether they're in a township, or whether they're in a rural community. So digital infrastructure is not a barrier anymore. We can't use that as an excuse. There are unplugged solutions, not just from Tangible, but from other service providers as well across the country.
Well, South Africa is grappling with a severe literacy crisis, as we've heard in recent years. Numeracy is also part of that particular crisis. So how exactly can coding and robotics start to alleviate that particular crisis?
So, and literacy and numeracy is something that we've been doing for decades. And the fact that we're struggling with it today means that we need to find new innovative approaches to teaching literacy and numeracy. And that's where I think coding and robotics is not actually divergent from the literacy and numeracy. We're not saying anything to oppose that. We actually think coding and robotics education can support literacy and numeracy. So in our lessons, for example, how our game works, maybe I should give the viewers just an example of how a solution works and then explain how that can help numeracy. So we have different mobile apps, different games that when it's on your phone, you don't need internet to play the games. Our most popular one at the moment is called Rangers. That's moving a game ranger to catch a poacher before a poacher gets to a rhino. So there's a poacher that's positioned somewhere and they are going to poach a rhino. You're a game ranger and then you have to move it. You get physical puzzle pieces. Each of these puzzle pieces have QR codes on them. So you're forward, backward, left, right. You assemble them in order to get to a position where you can catch the poacher. And then when you put the action puzzle, it catches the poacher. So then they will scan the puzzles, it will execute, they'll catch. And then what comes up is a fact about anti-poaching or wildlife preservation. And then they have to read that, right? So even in our game, there's an essence of reading. They have to read the puzzles. They have to look at the problem. And then they have to come up with a solution. And they play in teams. So they have to communicate with each other. So that's where we are saying, you have to say how many times you have to move. So that's numeracy. You have to communicate with each other and put the right puzzle pieces. That's literacy. And then when you get the fact at the end, you're still reading, but you are engaged, you're playing a fun game, and this is happening in the class. That's how we see this supporting the literacy and numeracy need. So yes, we agree, literacy, numeracy, we must focus on it. We are saying coding and robotics can actually support that.
Well, it sounds like a very interactive way of learning, you know, as you describe this, and if this was implemented in the foundation phases in our schools, I would wish that I was back in foundation phase because it sounds like a very fun and interactive way to learn. And I can always also hear the elements that you mentioned, how numeracy and literacy is actually part of this coding and robotics learning that is there. But why is it not implementable, or why is it not being implemented in our schools right now? But also, how can we change that in the next couple of years? Stay on the line with us. We need to take a break, Jackson, and then we can continue finding out, what robotics and coding can be teaching our learners in schools, but also the importance of readiness for a global economy. It's 20 minutes past 9 Central Africa time. We'll continue this conversation after the break.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Young couples or young people that are getting married, we often hear of divorces, that they're getting divorced, and it's quite worrying because when we attend these weddings, we want to see these people flourish and celebrate 30-year anniversaries. What do you think is the main challenge that is facing newlyweds?
We say that tell me how you were raised and I'll tell you how you love. So when we see people getting married, that's not where the relationship actually starts. The relationship starts with how you were raised, what you were familiar with, because we are attracted to what we are familiar with. If you don't have a background where love was prominent, where love was authentic, it's going to be very difficult for you to manufacture that in later life. So our upbringing has something to do with it.
The Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. No time to waste. Be on the move with Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa.
Hey, it's 21 minutes past 9 o'clock Central Africa. African time. You are listening to On the Move right here on Channel Africa. And we're starting a good conversation. And this one is really about how do we get that coding culture into our schooling system? How do we get robotics into the curriculum? Bali, I was watching this video on Instagram some days ago, and there was a guy who'd actually graduated in, I think it's one of these Asian countries, Japan or China or somewhere like that. And the guy didn't pitch to his graduation. Instead, he sent his robot there to actually retrieve.
No way. That's interesting. You should send me that video.
I will send you that video. So that's the world that we live in today. Robotics are not a thing of their past. They right in our present. And Africa is very, very much behind. We need to leapfrog the challenges in education to catch up there. And we're speaking to our guest who's helping us understand this landscape. That is Jackson Tshabalala, Tangible Africa Global Engagement Manager. We need a lot of leapfrogging to actually be done. And I think the potential lies in the education space, where we need to harvest young kids, a different generation that thinks differently about the world. What potential do we have in exercising education that's more futuristic right now? What can we actually do to even leapfrog some of the challenges we have on the African continent, Jackson?
Great question. And I also saw that clip. The video had the screen and the guy's face was on it.
Yeah.
That was... So when we start talking about the challenges that I had, there's many resource challenges, infrastructure challenges. I'll get to those soon. But I think the first challenge we have to address is how leadership thinks of education and what they vision for Africa, and specifically in this conversation for South Africa is. If you are seeing the world become digital, when we talk about artificial intelligence, even if we look at the top companies in the world, when you look at the 10 richest people, the 10 richest companies, they're all tech companies, whether it's tech in finance, whether it's tech in Medicare, whether it's tech in transportation, etc. So if we're saying that's the economy we are building, what's the education that is going to be the foundation of this economy? Is it education that is digital, or is it education that's traditional? That's the first question we need to ask leaders. If they decide it's education that's digital, what resources and what strategies are being put in that space in order to create an environment that's conducive to developing learners with digital skills? And one of the things we found is that teachers, there's called FOMO, fear of missing out, but we have teachers that have anxiety of missing out. They are so afraid because the training hasn't been there. And one of our Tangible Africa, demystifying coding. So we need to demystify what coding is. Every time teachers think of coding, it's ones and zeros, it's binary code, it's Python, it's JavaScript, it's whatever, C++. We're saying coding is just a list of instructions that tell a computer what to do. So if you're driving a car, if you were to hit the brakes and all of a sudden your car moves, you know the code is wrong. Imagine accelerating when you're trying to brake. Or if I could take your bank card and put it in an ATM and put in whatever digits I wanted and get access, that code is not working. But there's something I put in your card, it says enter PIN. If the PIN is incorrect, I can't go through. Once you can give practical examples like that to teachers, they can go to class and say, hey guys, how do you make a sandwich? As learners explain, oh, I get the loaf from the pantry, I take out the slices, I get the jam from the fridge. We are saying that's a process of computational thinking. That's the foundation of coding. And you see, you have the potential to be a coder just from your everyday activities. Once we can demystify coding, we can now put tools in the hands of teachers and learners that can give introductory concepts.
Yeah.
So our introductory concepts are basically logical thinking, sequential thinking, and computational thinking. All done without a computer, all done without internet, a few puzzle pieces, a mobile app. Even some don't have the mobile app. We can do it on a physical grid mat and toys that we find in classes. So when it comes to resources, that's not a limiting factor. We can work around that.
Okay.
And then, of course, we have to look at policymakers deciding that this thing is important.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point that you highlight there. You know, we were speaking about entrepreneurship the other day, and we were just having a chat between the two of us with Bali Jackson, and we're saying, you know, the problem with the whole thing about how our economies are structured is that we're structured definitely to go looking for jobs. We're not structured in a way where we go out and we create the jobs ourselves. I think it's the same thing for coding. We're not creating a wealth of knowledge system whereby we creating a dependency on the future of work and creating that environment for ourselves. Instead, we're still sticking to the traditional systems of the past that are way, way outdated.
That's so true. And that's just comfort, right? Better the devil you know than the one you don't. And the risk reward ratio is if you try something new, you might get a great reward. But we've been doing this for the last 7-8 years, and we've seen a net positive. And we believe that there are solutions to it. I think the viewers should also recognize that this was developed at the Nelson Mandela University by the head of department of the computing science department. He's been in coding and programming, software development education for the last 30 years. So there's true academic rigor in this. So some people might just be like, oh, the kids are just playing. There's not really anything to learn. But we've really worked with this. We've worked with hundreds of teachers. We've worked with teacher unions. And we've even come up with the entrepreneurship part of our program, because that's what we do need. We need those people who can think outside of the box and realize that the way we've been going, if we want things to change, we have to do different things. And I like the point that you make that being in the same kind of process, same kind of environment will give the same kind of results. So when it comes to focusing on literacy and numeracy, what are we doing different to what we were doing before?
Yeah, let's
and is this something that could bring in that could help? Please go ahead.
Sure. I just wanted to wrap it up and tell us where we can go to find out more about Tangible Africa and some of the work we do, and what kind of collaborations are possible with your organization.
Awesome. So as we wrap up, a big part, you can look at us on Tangible Africa. If you search Google or any search engine, we should be the first pop up, but it's tangible.leverfoundation.org. And then we are Tangible Africa on Facebook and Tangible Africa on YouTube. We post every single day. You can find out what's going on around the country. Currently, we're running something we call Coding for Mandela. This is an annual tournament that we do. All the schools that are involved with us, those are schools from South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, across the in July month, we celebrate the legacy of Nelson Mandela, where we have coding competitions happening across the country in different schools. My colleagues are in some of them now. You would have seen I got a phone call. They invited me to all, and the ownership is taken by the teachers. The teachers and schools are running these tournaments. And then the learners who are successful in that, they go to our Coding World Cup. In the 30th of September, we'll have countries such as South Korea, Finland, Germany,
that's cool.
USA, China, all these countries. So this solution that we're doing Unplugged has actually international relevance, and in developed countries it works. So that's how you can collaborate with us. You can sponsor tournaments, you can sponsor coding kits to schools, and you can actually do some articles for us if you see the importance of coding and robotics in the country and globally.
Thank you so much, Jackson. Such a informative conversation. We have these now and then, but I think we have to insert the importance of the moving world and us catching up as the African continent. Thank you for joining us here on Channel Africa.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
All right. That's a great conversation with Jackson Tshabalala, Tangible Africa Global Engagement Manager.